We are in Merida. So I took a couple of flights from Guanajuato. I had a layover in Mexico City, and now here we are in Merida. And I'm very happy to say that Martina is back in Mexico.
Hey everybody, it's great to be back in Mexico again. Merida is so different than the other parts of Mexico that we've been in. One of the first things we've noticed is how hot it is here. It's been hovering around the mid-90s, and it's definitely going to take a while to get used to that. I spent the last few months in Europe visiting family that I haven't seen in about 2 years. And then it was back to the US to visit more family, and I have to tell you, this heat is very oppressive right now.
Another thing we noticed upon arriving here in Merida was the huge increase in foreign tourists. When we first arrived, we were staying in Centro, and the businesses in Centro do cater to the tourists. With this comes some additional hustle and bustle. It certainly has a different feel than what I had in the mountain towns. Centro is fascinating and full of history, and people flock here for a good reason. If you ever start to feel overcrowded, you can walk in any direction and be rewarded with quiet streets, cheaper food, and beautiful architecture that seems to go on and on.
At the heart of Centro is the Plaza Grande. It's a park-like area where they host a lot of fun cultural activities. On Wednesdays, they put on a performance of the Mayan ball game, which has been played for more than 3,000 years. The object of the game is to put a rubber ball through a small circle using your foot and/or your hip. Much more than just a sport, the game was also a religious event which even involved human sacrifice. We'll dig deeper into this in a future video. On weekends, this place bustles with food and craft vendors. It's a great place to find a cheap meal, and it has a great vibe. On the south side of the plaza, you will find the Calle Montejo Museo. This 16th century restored house has an exceptionally beautiful facade. The museum is free to enter and shows off the stunning hardwood interior and exceptional craftsmanship that went into many of the homes here. There is also a small section that houses rotating art exhibits.
On the east side of the plaza, the Cathedral of Merida towers over all the surrounding buildings. Before the Spanish arrived, this was home to the ancient Mayan city Tajo. The cathedral was built by the Spanish starting in 1517 and was partially built using the stones from the ancient Mayan city. This seems to be a common theme running throughout the Yucatan. Unlike many of the churches we visited in Mexico that have large and ornate altars, the Cathedral of Merida shows off a single large crucifix. The entire interior is quite awe-inspiring and well worth visiting. Next to the cathedral is the Revolution Passage, a walking street that houses sculptural art exhibits.
Just a few blocks from the Plaza Grande is one of our favorite places in Merida. The Mercado San Benito is a sprawling, bustling market that is a feast for the senses. You can find anything here. It's crazy, crowded, but that's half of the fun. There are sections with prepared food, produce, clothes, hardware, and even live animals. The market area expands well past the San Benito market, and the craziness goes on for several blocks in every direction. You really need to make a point to go here if you visit Merida. Even in the hustle and bustle, you can always find a quiet place to relax and grab a quick snack or a cold drink.
One of the first things you notice here is the beautiful architecture. Stunning colonial buildings line the streets. When walking around, you see these ornate facades, but behind them are these great buildings with huge doors and windows, and more often than not, a large courtyard. Many of these buildings are now beautifully restored homes, but you also see lots of abandoned buildings as well. Often the doors and windows on these are covered over with concrete to ensure that the stunning floor tiles remain in place. Staying in a restored colonial hacienda is an absolute must. even if only for a few nights when visiting Merida.
Merida prospered in the 19th and 20th centuries due to the cultivation of Henequen. Henequen is a type of agave, and it was used to make high-quality rope, and it's known for its incredibly strong fibers. The natural sugars in the plant are also used to produce a local alcohol, not to be confused with tequila, which comes from the blue agave. The wealth that the agave plantations created was incredible, and at one time Merida is said to have had more millionaires than anywhere else in the world. Take a stroll down Calle Montejo and you can see evidence of this wealth. In the early 20th century, Merida faced a labor shortage. Many of the Henequen plantations looked to Asia to source other workers. Korea was unstable at this time. Many immigrants jumped at the chance to come to Merida in the hopes that it would improve their lives when they returned back to Korea. Unfortunately, they found that when they arrived here, the work conditions were brutal. When their contracts were up, the situation had not improved in Korea, and many of them decided to stay. You'll find that in Mexico now, there are over 50,000 people with Korean descent.
Calle Montejo is a great place to explore. Beyond the mansions, there are cafes and restaurants, and it's just a great street to walk due to the shady trees that line the sidewalk. On Sundays, this and several other surrounding streets are closed and are open to bicycle-only traffic. At the north end of Calle Montejo, you will find the Monumento a la Patria. Built by Colombian sculptor Romulo Rosso, along with architect Manuel Dominguez, it was originally going to be a monument to the Mexican flag, but later became a monument to the history of Mexico, and it took 11 years to complete. After completion, Rosso once said of the Monumento a la Patria, "I have erected the first altar to the homeland in Merida, to erase from the national spirit the ideas about Yucatecan separatism. The homeland belongs to everyone."
Sometimes you have to ask yourself, what is Mexico? Mexico is so vast and diverse, and its beauty is unparalleled. If you take the time to explore, you will be well rewarded for your efforts. Merida is so different from all the other places in Mexico that we've seen in the last year. In many ways, it feels like it's its own country. While the heat and the humidity is definitely a shock to the senses, the early mornings and the evenings are really quite pleasant. We get up early in the morning to run errands, sightsee, and we're definitely trying out all the new restaurants in the evenings.
So far, we are really enjoying Merida. In the upcoming weeks, we are going to explore more of the Yucatan and take a deep dive into the history and its people.